Hi, I'm Sean.
I'm Rhonda.
Have you ever felt like you were on an emotional roller coaster?
That's how it can be sometimes when we're resolving marital issues.
You know, if you think about it, being on a roller coaster for some people is exciting.
And for others, it's get me off.
It can make you feel nauseous sometimes.
Right, like you're sick.
Have you ever felt like when you were talking to your spouse, they just emotionally vomited on you?
Well, this has to do with the variety and intensity of emotions we go through when we're resolving conflict.
You know, our whole sense of balance is affected when we spin around and are on up and down roller coaster ride.
We can feel completely turned around, like we don't know which side is up anymore.
You know, sometimes we just need to regain our balance before we start to talk to our spouse about a marital issue.
Let's talk about the different ways couples approach conflict.
You know, one of the first ways we want to look at is what we call emotional aggression. What is that?
Wow, this one is rough for the spouse because the emotionally aggressive spouse is pursuing. We're going to resolve conflict.
They can be chasing. A lot of times this is the woman that comes chasing after the
Right.
man. We're going to resolve this issue, whether you like it or not.
Right. And in a small percentage, the roles can flip, and this can be the male who might be emotionally aggressive.
A lot of times the man is going to withdraw when that happens.
Right. So the one who's emotionally aggressive is wanting to resolve issues at all costs, even really when you look at it a little closer at the cost of losing the relationship or damaging the intimacy in the relationship.
Yeah, and that's where we have to remember that the relationship is more important than the issue itself. We don't want to sabotage the relationship just so that we can talk about an issue.
What does it look like to be emotionally aggressive from the standpoint of the one that's emotionally aggressive and the standpoint of the spouse of the one that's emotionally aggressive?
Right. So, what does that look like?
Well, if a spouse is emotionally aggressive, they might raise their voice. They might come across as dominating or more demanding.
We can both do that. Sometimes if one starts it, the other one is going to reply in kind.
Right. So the emotionally aggressive is going to maybe bring up issues at inopportune times.
And that's why we call it emotional vomiting. You think of the surprise that you would have if somebody just suddenly let go at your feet.
And really, someone who is emotionally vomiting is kind of spilling it all out with no bounds. They're not thinking it through ahead of time, considering how they come across. And the other spouse is like, "What are you doing?" And we wonder why we can't be heard.
Yeah, we expect the other one to be happy with what we just laid at their feet.
There's actually a process that we get into at some point about the way we can deal with our issues in a way that makes us more likely to be heard by our spouse.
You know, if we just simply give them a little heads up and say, hey, I've got something, an issue I'd like to talk to you about. When would be a good time for you?
Right. And then you look at the spouse of the emotionally aggressive. They're feeling attacked all the time, and they're going to tend to get defensive. So the emotionally aggressive spouse is probably going to come across as not complaining, but what is the word I'm
Critical.
thinking? But
Criticizing.
the emotionally aggressive spouse is going to come across as criticizing and blaming, which
and can make the other one kind of pull back into a
and be
shell.
defensive.
They're going to put up their guard to protect themselves from
Right.
the attack.
So the emotionally aggressive spouse will then go from criticism a lot of times to contempt, which causes the other spouse to withdraw and stonewall. And so if you're the emotionally aggressive spouse, you want to ask yourself, what am I doing that's closing my spouse? Because usually we hear they won't talk to me about anything.
Why are they fleeing from me?
Right. So when we look at the emotionally avoiding spouse, what does that look like?
Well, I'm kind of familiar with that one myself because I've been there, done that. So it's usually because we feel like that we're being attacked. We're
Right.
taking it personally.
And this is usually the spouse on the other side of the emotionally aggressive spouse. They're running from it.
Right. So we have to change our interpretation of the information that we're hearing.
Right.
Is the information I'm hearing a personal attack, or is it something to better the relationship? And so,
Yeah.
if, for example, a man could hear his wife's criticism as being something that's going to help the relationship improve and grow, then he can view it as an improvement and not as an attack.
And actually, a criticism can be framed more as a complaint, which is the positive side, where criticism is more of a blaming, putting down someone's character qualities. And so if we present what we need to say in more of a positive way, it doesn't come across as attacking.
Right. Many times a man, for example, might shut down and become quiet to process, and then the wife feels like that he's pulled into his shell.
He's abandoned me.
That's right. So she's having negative feelings while he may simply be becoming quiet to be able to process the information to figure out, where do I go from here? What do I say? Maybe he doesn't want to lash out and say something unkind, so he gets quiet.
And among men, it's considered noble to withdraw and protect the woman, even from himself. So if he feels he's escalating, he may go quiet to protect her.
That's true.
Women don't get that, though.
You know, and both of us can be doing what we sense from our own vantage point is being helpful to maintain the relationship, but those two are not necessarily working together.
Right. They're sort of the ditches on the opposite sides of the road. The emotionally aggressive spouse wants to resolve the issues, but is doing it aggressively.
That's right.
And is coming across poorly, where the emotionally avoiding spouse is afraid to confront conflict, probably because of something from the past.
So, what is emotional vomiting for the person who is avoiding conflict?
Wow, they tend to hold it all in until they just explode. So it's not a little bit of emotion that's negative for the partner here and there. It's an explosion all at once and all over the place.
It's still a time bomb with a longer fuse.
Right. They're just holding it in. So how can the emotionally aggressive and the emotionally avoiding spouses change?
They could be more open to discuss things quickly and be open with each other instead of maybe putting a mask up that, oh, this isn't really bothering me, you know, or I'm pretending that everything's okay. And the one that is aggressive really needs to learn how to, they need to tone it. They need to tone it down a little bit, and maybe give the other one some heads up that, hey, something's going on here, I need to make you aware of.
And so the emotionally aggressive doesn't realize it, but they're doing and saying things that are offensive to the one who's withdrawing. The one who's withdrawing has a problem with conflict. So you're going to have to create a safe environment to pull them out and ask questions to find out what's going on.
That's right. And even having the idea that conflict is a healthy part of a relationship. It doesn't mean it's diseased or has a problem.
Right.
So let's find out what you tend to do. What is your tendency?
Do you tend to be emotionally aggressive, or do you tend to be emotionally avoiding?
That's right. And if you can identify that, it's going to help you right off the bat to know how to interpret the information coming from your spouse, how you're looking at it, how they're looking at it.